This is the in-class lab number 1, where we'll be working with latitude and longitude and getting a handle on how to download data and then import it into a mappable format. And we'll be using Google Drive and Google Fusion tables to do this. I've navigated to openaddresses.io, and you can see the address up here. If you were to do a Google search for open addresses, you'll be able to get to the data site. And Open Addresses is a new and growing collection of global addresses. So you can scroll to or navigate to a particular city and oftentimes get pretty good addresses from this particular site. And importantly, attached to the addresses is a latitude and longitude that can be used for geocoding and other mapping applications that need a latitude and longitude to get very precise location. So we're going to use this data set as our test or as our exercise data. So I'm here at Open Addresses, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on the opening here, and I'm going to scroll down. And about halfway down the page there is a View Download Options tab here, so we're going to click on that. And once we get into the download options, we can navigate to different locations. We can get some very large data sets, but we want a very small data set because we're somewhat restricted when we're using Google Drive and Fusion tables to do mapping. We don't want to get something too massive that's one, going to take too long, and two, is going to hit the threshold that Google Drive will allow. So we're going to get a relatively small city. So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, we'll be able to get down to the US cities. So I'm in Japan. In France, we can see F and JP there. Excuse the scrolling. Gonna get myself all the way down to the bottom. And we can see the US cities here. So it's US / the state and then the city. And we're going to want to go to Wyoming, which is way down at the end of the list, and we want to get City of Wright. This is a very small city in Wyoming, and we're going to use that data as our prep data. So we're going to go ahead and download the zip file. So we'll click once on the zip file. That's going to download to wherever our drive is. In this case, I'll bring it to my desktop so I can see it there. So I'm just going to go to show in the folder, and I'm going to bring it to my desktop. Now, if you haven't opened up zips before, we're going to do this now. So we have a zipped data set here. I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to open it. I'm either going to open it with 7-zip or just extract all. So if you have 7-zip installed, you can extract to here, or you can simply just say extract all. And I'll say extract. It's going to open it up to an individual folder. And if I look in that folder, I'm going to have a README document. So let's click on that. And it says this data was packaged around 2016, 7/12. So that's great. So it's recent data. And if we go into the actual data itself, we can see two things: a VRT file, which we don't want to use, but we can also see a comma separated values file, and that's where our data is housed. So that's what we want to navigate to when we're actually importing this into Google Drive. Okay, so I have it sitting on my desktop here. I'm going to go ahead and throw away the zip folder because I don't need that. And now I'm going to go to my drive. And so if you're in an institution where your Google account that's tied to the institution has restrictions on it, you want to make sure that you're using an individual Gmail account to log in. So I'm currently logged in under a Gmail account that is separate from the institution, so it doesn't have any restricted privileges. And the reason we want to do that is because Fusion Tables is considered an experimental app. It's not a primary Google app, so you may or may not have access to that. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to make sure that we have Fusion Tables enacted. So I'm within Drive right now, and if I do a right click, and I can see my germane applications here, Google Slides and Sheets, those are pretty standard. But Fusion Tables is considered to be an experimental app, so you may need to go ahead and connect to it. I currently have it installed here, so we can see it on the drop down here. But if it wasn't here, what I would do is I would go to Connect More Apps, and then I would simply type in Fusion Tables here. And that's going to bring me to the actual experimental Fusion Tables option. And instead of rate it, which I don't really want to do, I would just simply connect it like I have these other ones here. Okay, so once we actually can see it, we can see Fusion Tables, we're set up in that respect. But what we do have to do before we even get going with Fusion Tables is actually get the data into Drive. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. We're going to simply upload a file. So I'm going to click Upload Files, and I'm going to navigate to where my data is. So here I can see it. It's City of Wright, and I double click on that, double click, and get into where the actual sheet is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on City of Wright and say Open, and that's going to go ahead and upload it. Now currently it's not actually in a Google Sheets format, and before we go into Fusion Tables we want to be able to have it in a tabular format that Google Drive really understands. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a right click on this, and we're going to say Open with Google Sheets. So it goes ahead and opens it up just as you would say tabular data in Excel, and we can actually see our data. One of the things that's very particular about Fusion Tables is that when it's dealing with latitude and longitude, it wants to see those columns named literally as latitude and longitude. And we can currently see right now in our data we have a long and a lat, and we know that those are referencing latitude and longitude, but we need to tell the sheet which one it actually is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just simply going to change latitude to L-A-T to latitude. So I'm going to spell L-A-T-I-T-U-D-E. And then I'm going to go over here to longitude. I'm going to do the same thing, L-O-N-G, Longitude. So I have those spelled correctly. It's all set to go. And if I want to, I can go ahead and get rid of some of these columns. We could do that. Let's just go ahead and remove the hash column because that's relative to the original data in open addresses. We don't really need it now. So I'm just going to go ahead and say delete column. So we could do lots of things here in Google Drive, but really all we need to accomplish right now is just to change lat to latitude and long to longitude. So we've done that in the column headers, and we're kind of ready to go. So I'm going to go back to Google Drive, and I can see my sheet here, so that's great. So now what I need to do is I simply need to get into Google Fusion Tables. So I'm going to click on Google Fusion Tables now, and that's going to bring me just outside of my drive. But what's important here is that I can upload tables, but I can also see my Google Spreadsheets. So I'm going to click on Google Spreadsheets, and it sees my City of Wright there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. It'll take it a second to actually load into Fusion Tables. So once it's loaded in, and we can see our column headers here, and we can see longitude and latitude, that's very important. We go ahead and say Next. And then we'll just keep the table name City of Wright. It's not particularly important. The description, if we wanted to change these things around, we could certainly do that. And then we're going to go ahead and say Finish. And as we finish this, if we've got everything correct, we should be able to see an actual mapping instance of this data. So if everything's done correctly, if we click on Map of Latitude, we should be able to see our City of Wright. So take a second to load in. Once it actually loads in, we should see those points correctly. All right, there's our points. And let's scroll out a bit. You can see how teeny tiny this City of Wright is. And what's also really important is that we can change this imagery to satellite imagery. So let's click on satellite imagery, and we can zoom in. Cool. So now we actually have our points right on top of the correct addresses. This data set probably originated from a GIS department, so we can see that these are very exact in terms of the points, and they're either the center of the parcel or they're developed specifically for addressing by the city likely. They seem to be very organized in terms of their latitude and longitude. And then if we kind of just look around in the image, we can see City of Wright was developed in the 1970s, and it's related to this mining activity here. So Thunder Basin coal is kind of the economic driver, or was the economic driver, of City of Wright. And if we also look at the imagery, we can kind of zoom in and we can see a lot of the oil development and probably fracking sites very close to the city itself. So if we zoom in here, we can see a lot of this type of activity. So that's our data within Fusion Tables, and we can certainly share this out. We can click on a share button and change the privileges and share this data out if we want to. Another option is that we can download it. So if we just click on download, we could at this point create a KML. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we can actually look at this imagery in Google Earth. So here we're not going to have it in CSV format. We want to actually have it in KML. So I say KML, and I'm going to download it. And as I download it, let's bring it to the desktop. So I'm going to show it in the folder and then just bring it over here onto my desktop. And I'm going to collapse my browser here. I have Google Earth installed, so I'm just going to go ahead and open it with Google Earth. And we're just going to take a look at Google historical imagery so we can kind of understand our new data relative to satellite imagery. So when we bring it into Google Earth, we can see that we get a bit of a tilt, which sometimes can be useful, but in this case is a little bit annoying. So what we can do is we can go up to View and go to Reset and reset the tilt. That'll give us our points in an easier format to look at, to see the form of our points. And let's go ahead and let's zoom out a little bit and take a look at the area around the city. Let's go look at the coal mine itself. In Google Earth, what you don't have in Google Maps or in Fusion Tables is you don't have access to historical imagery. So here's where we can actually see historical imagery and start to understand how this landscape has changed in the vicinity of City of Wright. So here we can see on the top, under historical imagery, where the little clock is, that we're looking at very recent imagery. So 7/18/2016 is the first tranche, and you can see there's these little lines. That's where the imagery is broken into different dates. So if I go back a little bit, I can see my image change. Now let's go all the way back to 1994 here, and we can see that it's a dramatic difference between 1994 and the development that's taken place in more recent years. Once we have it in KML format, there's lots of things we can do with that data in a GIS format. We can do more analysis in different spatial software. But to get it to this point, to get our actual points to show up on a map, we need to go through this process of taking the two columns of latitude and longitude and changing those into something that's actually in map format, that's a spatial data set.